So, my name is David Tarbell. I'm here to talk about out-of-body experience. Let me start off with explaining what out-of-body experience is. I'm going to pose a question. Has anybody ever had a dream where they're falling, but they don't see it through their own eyes? They see their own body falling down. So we have a couple people, obviously, but most of us have had that dream. It's kind of like that, but when you're in an out-of-body experience, it's not when you're completely unconscious. It's more of a subconscious thing. And a doctor from Gizmodo.com described it as by having brain trauma, sensory deprivation, near-death experience, so on and so forth, stuff that would affect the brain so much so that you could remove yourself from your body and see it. But when there was a couple of scientists, and this is again from Gizmodo, they discovered that there was a woman who could just naturally do it herself. She didn't need any sort of drugs. She didn't need anything to put herself into that state. She could just do it naturally. And they ran like a CAT scan on her, except it's not called a CAT scan actually. It's called an fMRI scan. And when they ran that scan on her when she was in her out-of-body experience, they discovered that her brain waves were acting strangely. She was doing it by, quote, activating the left side of several areas associated with the kinesthetic imagery. So what that is the way you see like a body part. So here's my arm, but you can imagine somebody's arm, the shape it has and the way it moves, right? So she would do it in a way where she could close her eyes and project an image of herself and see it. So therefore, people wanted to put that into technology and make it a much more bigger part of the world, such as medical equipment. They could use it for maybe video games, stuff like that. A couple doctors actually tried experimenting on this. One of them was called Dr. Arison. This is from TheGuardian.com. So his experiment, Dr. Arison wanted to see if the brain could be tricked into believing its body was somewhere else. In his experiment, participants wore goggles containing a video screen for each eye. Each screen was fed images from a separate camera behind the participant, and because the two images were combined by the brain into a single image, they saw a 3D image of their own back. Dr. Arison then moved a plastic rod towards the location just below the cameras while the participant's real chest was simultaneously touched in the corresponding position. The participants reported feeling that they were located back where the cameras had been placed, watching a body that belonged to somebody else. So they found a way to connect to the brain and create sensory into a rod that connected to their own body, and then they could see somebody else's back when it was actually their own. So they started making a little bit of breakthroughs, and eventually a man named Olaf Blanc, again from TheGuardian.com, he is from the École-Polytechnique Fédérale de Lausanne, he's French, carried out a similar experiment but added another exercise after the virtual reality section, blindfolding the volunteers and guiding them a few steps backwards. When the volunteers were asked to return to their original position, he found they were confused, always overshooting their actual start position in the direction of their virtual body. Quote, "This is a part of what people with spontaneous out-of-body experiences have. The self is not within the bodily borders," said Professor Blanc. "This is some aspect of an out-of-body experience we have reproduced in a mechanical way." So they have made actually quite a few breakthroughs. As you know, there is virtual reality stuff going on in the gaming industry, such as The Void, there's the Oculus Rift, and I believe that they are actually corresponding with one another to create a more interactive experience, not only just through the visuals, but through the actual bodily movement of what they're doing. But they won't actually have to move. All they would have to do is place a helmet on their head. There would be something attached to the back of the neck where it attaches to their spine, and then another part right here that attaches to where I was talking about the kinesthetic part of the brain, where it could imagine the bodily movements of somebody's body. And so now that we have all of these things being produced, what can be affected by this? Like I said before, medical equipment, video games, we could actually implement that into the movies, so we could have somebody put themselves into the position of the person actually running through the maze with Indiana Jones, jumping over things and stuff like that, and they could feel what's happening as it's going on. Crime investigation, so we could go the whole Minority Report, but maybe not that far, where they could reenact the scene and investigators could actually like feel what they were feeling, but maybe not to the extent of actually feeling the pain and death. Also, space training would be an incredible way to do that. Feeling like you're actually in space and floating around, but not actually having to be there. There are those machines that spin you around with the circles, and that's good too. That's anti-gravity machines. But if you could have it so that you just put on a helmet and you learn just through by like experiencing it, I feel like that would just be a whole lot better. And there's so much more we could apply this to. So from the out-of-body experience experiments and the studies through it, I believe we could become a much more experienced, educated, and just therefore much better human beings in the future. Thank you.